They say betrayal is a knife in the back from someone you shielded with your chest. That's a lie. Real betrayal is when they hand you a pen with a smile so you can sign your own death warrant, and you sign it because the person handing it to you is your own flesh and blood. For me, that person was my brother Julian. We were sitting in the stuffy, dark oak-paneled office of our family solicitor, Mr. Henderson. The air smelled of old paper, lemon wax, and death. Father had been dead for only a week. His powerful heart, which had run Hayward Industries for 30 years, had simply stopped. He left behind a legacy of steel, concrete, and numbers, an empire that Julian and I were meant to inherit together. 50-50. That's what his last will said, the one he had read to us both with a laugh just 6 months ago, calling us his two pillars. Mr. Henderson, a balding man with the eyes of a basset hound, cleared his throat and slid a document toward me. Miss Amelia, your signature here, please. This is the standard procedure for accepting the inheritance. I took the pen. Its gold casing was as cold as a tombstone. Julian sat beside me. He was 2 years older, always more charming, more calculating. He was looking at me now with such feigned sorrow that I wanted to laugh. He placed his hand on mine. "We'll get through this, Amy," he whispered. "We'll do it for Dad." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and signed. Then he signed. Mr. Henderson gathered the papers, placed them in a folder, and with a heavy sigh, spoke the words that shattered my world into a before and an after. Well, that's everything. According to the last will and testament of Mr. Richard Hayward, notarized and signed by both parties, 100% of the assets of Hayward Industries, as well as all real estate and personal accounts, are transferred to the sole ownership of his son, Julian Hayward. The room tilted. I looked at Julian. The sympathetic smile slid off his face, leaving only cold, predatory satisfaction. He looked at me as if I weren't his sister, but an annoying obstacle that had finally been removed. "What?" My voice was barely a whisper. "But," Dad said, 50-50. Mr. Henderson coughed awkwardly. "In the document you just signed, Miss Amelia, you renounce your share in favor of your brother. It was your voluntary decision." The blood drained from my face. I snatched the document from his hands. Everything looked perfect, legally flawless. And my signature at the bottom. They had swapped the pages. In that brief moment when Julian distracted me with his sympathy, placing his hand on mine, Henderson must have made the switch. A simple, brilliant, and utterly ruthless scheme. I looked at my brother. There wasn't a hint of guilt in his eyes. Only triumph. And in that moment, in that stuffy office, two people were born. The new Julian, the ruthless king of an empire built by our father. And the new Amelia, the one who died and the one who rose from the ashes. I could have screamed. I could have caused a scene, filed a lawsuit that I would have lost spectacularly, painting myself as a hysterical and greedy sister. But I saw in Julian's eyes what he expected: tears, rage, helplessness. And I decided not to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I did what he didn't expect. I broke. I sobbed. Violently, bitterly, like a child who had everything taken away. I fell to my knees, pleading with him, asking why, clinging to his perfectly tailored trousers. I played the part of the victim so convincingly that for a second even I believed in my own weakness. I saw the triumph in his gaze shift to contemptuous pity. That was exactly what I needed. He had to believe I was crushed, destroyed, safe. "I'm sorry, Amy," he said, helping me up with a touch of disgust. "It was Father's wish. He didn't think you could handle such a burden. I'll take care of you." He wrote me a check. A humiliatingly modest sum, enough for a couple of years of a comfortable but quiet life. "Start over," he said patronizingly. "Find yourself a nice, simple occupation. Be happy." I took the check with trembling hands, whispered thank you, and left, hunched over like a beaten dog. That night, I packed a single suitcase. I took nothing that reminded me of my past life except for one photograph, my father and me on the deck of his yacht, laughing, the wind whipping through our hair. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. The broken, weeping girl was gone. A woman with eyes of polished steel looked back at me. Julian hadn't just left me with nothing. He left me with a purpose. He wanted me to disappear and start over. And so I did. I left the city, the country, cutting off all contact. I vanished. But I wasn't going to start over. I was going to prepare for the end. His end. He took my father's empire from me. I would take everything from him. Not from the outside, not through courtrooms or stock market attacks. I would destroy his world from within. Through what he considered his greatest pillar of support. Through his perfect family. 7 years. Long enough to heal the wounds. Long enough to forge armor from the scars. I didn't waste a single day. I cashed Julian's check and invested every last cent. Not in stocks or real estate. I invested it in myself. I changed my name. I was now Clara Vance. Amelia Hayward was dead, buried under a pile of betrayal. Clara was a work of art, sculpted by my hatred. I earned 2 degrees, one in finance in Zurich, the other in art history in Florence. I learned to appreciate wine, painting, opera, and human vices. I mastered 3 languages. My body became as much of an instrument as my mind. Yoga, Pilates, kickboxing. I became the kind of woman Julian, with his primitive worldview, would never recognize and, upon meeting, would desperately want to impress. In parallel, I built my own small but very profitable business, a consulting firm specializing in quiet, anonymous mergers and acquisitions. I learned to find the cracks in the most monolithic corporations. I became an expert in demolition. All this time I watched him. Every 6 months, I received a detailed report from the best private detective agency in London. I knew everything. I knew that a year after my exile, Julian had married Eleanor Winters, a girl from a good but impoverished family. A perfect match, beautiful, quiet, educated, a wonderful backdrop for a powerful husband. I knew they had 2 children. Thomas, who was now 15, and Charlotte, who had just turned 10. I saw their photos, the perfect family with perfect smiles in front of their perfect country home. I knew Julian's weaknesses. He was vain. He craved recognition not just in the business world but in high society, which still saw him as a new-money upstart. He collected contemporary art, not understanding it but knowing it was prestigious. I also knew his family's weaknesses. Eleanor, according to the reports, was lonely. Julian was too busy with his empire to pay her any attention. She chaired several charitable foundations, a typical occupation for a bored millionaire's wife. She didn't crave money but meaning, tension, intellectual intimacy. Thomas was in the shadow of his overbearing father. Julian saw him only as an heir, a projection of himself. But the boy, my detectives reported, had a secret talent. He composed electronic music. He hid a synthesizer in the basement and posted his tracks online under a pseudonym. He craved recognition for his individuality. Charlotte was the most complex element. She adored her father but rarely saw him. She was a quiet, observant child who loved animals more than anything. She dreamed of a dog, but Julian was against it, too messy. She craved simple, unconditional love. For 7 years, I gathered these details like pieces of a complex mosaic. And when the picture was complete, I knew the time had come. Clara Vance was ready for her debut. My return was as quiet as a feather falling on velvet. I bought a gallery in Mayfair, a few blocks from the Hayward Industries headquarters. The Aurora Gallery quickly became the most fashionable spot in the city. I exhibited bold, avant-garde artists, and the press raved about my impeccable taste and mysterious past. Eleanor was the first to take the bait. I knew she was a trustee for a foundation that helped orphans. I organized a charity auction at my gallery to benefit that very foundation. I donated a piece by one of the most sought-after artists. Of course, Eleanor had to attend. She was exactly as I had imagined, elegant, reserved, with sad eyes. I met her at the entrance. "Mrs. Hayward, what an honor." "I'm Clara Vance. I so admire your work with the foundation." She was surprised by my warm welcome. We struck up a conversation about art. I didn't talk about prices or investments, as Julian would have. I talked about the emotions that color evokes, about hidden meanings, about an artist's rebellion against the grayness of the world. I saw a spark ignite in her eyes. For the first time in years, someone was speaking to her not as Julian Hayward's wife, but as an interesting, profound individual. "My husband collects too," she said with a note of apology, "but he only sees numbers in it." "Art isn't about numbers," I replied softly. "It's a dialogue. Sometimes a salvation." By the end of the evening, we were on a first-name basis. A week later, I invited her to lunch. Then again, I became her sanctuary. I listened to her stories about Julian's coldness, his obsession with work, her feeling of emptiness. I didn't judge or offer advice. I was just there. I became her best friend, the sister she never had. Next was Thomas. Through Eleanor, I learned he was into computer noises. She said it with a slight disdain, echoing her husband's words. I asked her to introduce me to him. The meeting took place in their huge, soulless house. Thomas was a sullen teenager who was expecting another boring conversation with his mother's friend. "Your mother told me you compose music," I began. "Can I listen?" He was shocked. No one had ever asked him that. Hesitantly, he led me to the basement. And there, amidst the old junk, I heard his tracks. It wasn't just computer noise. It was complex, atmospheric, incredibly talented music. "Thomas, this is brilliant," I said with absolute sincerity. "It sounds like the soundtrack to a future that hasn't been filmed yet." He blushed. "My father says it's a waste of time." "Your father built an empire on concrete and steel. He thinks in terms of the past. You create worlds out of sound. That's the language of the future." I looked him straight in the eye. "I have a friend, a well-known music producer in Berlin. I could send him your demos. Anonymously, if you like." His eyes widened with disbelief and excitement. That day, I ceased to be just Mom's friend to him. I became his ally, the only adult who saw him not as an heir, but as a creator. With Charlotte, it was both the easiest and the hardest. I knew about her dream. During one of my visits with Eleanor, I accidentally left a brochure from an animal shelter on the table. Charlotte found it. "Do you like dogs?" she asked me with her big, serious eyes. "I adore them," I replied. "When I was a little girl, I had a golden retriever. His name was Sunny. I told her about him, about how we played, how he slept by my bed. I spoke to her as an equal. When Julian arrived, he disdainfully pushed the brochure aside and changed the subject. Charlotte's face fell. A week later, I invited Eleanor and the children for a picnic at a country club. And, coincidentally, a friend of mine was there with his golden retriever puppy. Charlotte spent the entire day with it. She didn't leave the puppy's side for a second. I saw her face light up with happiness. When it was time to leave, she was crying. "Daddy will never let me have one," she whispered. I hugged her. "Sometimes adults are afraid of things they don't understand," I said. "They're afraid of the mess, the responsibility. But they just don't know how much love can fit inside one little heart." Julian saw me. We crossed paths at receptions, at dinners at their home. He was charmed by me. Clara Vance was exactly the kind of woman he wanted to be seen with. Smart, successful, independent, moving in the highest circles. He flirted with me, trying to impress me with his money and power. He had no idea that the woman he so openly admired was the same broken sister he had written off 7 years ago. I played my part. I was polite but distant, letting him know I couldn't be bought. drove him crazy. He didn't realize that while he was trying to win my attention, I had already conquered his family. My strategy was simple. I didn't turn them against Julian. I simply gave them what he couldn't or wouldn't give them. And in contrast to my warmth, his coldness became unbearable. Eleanor began to change. She grew more confident, started arguing with her husband about his attitude toward art, toward her charity work. She would often say, "Well, Clara thinks." I could see how it infuriated Julian. Thomas got a contract with the Berlin label, anonymous, just as he wanted. His first single became a hit in the underground clubs of Europe. For the first time in his life, he tasted real success, his own, not his father's. He started spending more time in his makeshift studio than with the economics textbooks his father forced on him. Their arguments grew louder. And then I struck at Charlotte. For her 11th birthday, I gifted her a share in a foundation for saving endangered species, and a small brooch in the shape of a golden retriever. Julian gave her shares in Hayward Industries. She didn't even glance at them. She wore my brooch all evening. Julian began to suspect something. Not the truth, of course. He was too arrogant for that. He just felt he was losing control. His family, his perfect picture, was starting to fall apart. And at the center of this web, he believed, was Clara Vance, his new obsession and his wife's best friend. Meanwhile, I began the assault on his empire. Using my knowledge and connections, I initiated a series of anonymous audits in his companies. I leaked information about his questionable deals to journalists. I poached his key employees, offering them better positions in companies that were secretly owned by me. Julian's empire, which had seemed indestructible, began to show cracks. The stock prices started to fall. Partners grew nervous. He became irritable, angry, and he took all his anger out on his family. Climax came at the annual charity ball hosted by Eleanor. It was the social event of the year. Julian was scheduled to give a speech. But the day before, I arranged for information to be leaked to the press that one of his construction sites was polluting a local river with toxic waste. An environmental scandal erupted instantly. The ball, Julian was furious. He barely spoke to Eleanor. When it was time for his speech, he took the stage and, instead of thanking the sponsors, began to aggressively defend himself, attacking corrupt journalists and eco-terrorists. It was pathetic and undignified. Eleanor looked at him with horror and shame. After his disastrous speech, she came to me. Her hands were shaking. "I can't do this anymore, Clara," she whispered. "This isn't the man I married. I want to leave him." I hugged her. "I'm with you," I said. "Whatever happens." That same evening, Thomas, who had been dragged to the ball, announced to his father that he was dropping out of university and moving to Berlin to dedicate himself to music. "You're not going anywhere," Julian yelled. "You are a Hayward. You will run the company, not strum on your toys." "I don't want your company," Thomas shouted back. "I don't want to be you." It was the end. The family he considered his trophy, his dynasty, had rebelled against him. He was left alone in the middle of a ballroom full of people looking at him with judgment and pity. His eyes searched for me. In his gaze, there was rage, confusion, and something else, a vague recognition, as if he were trying to see something familiar in Clara Vance's features. I walked up to him. "You," he hissed. "This was all you. You destroyed my family." "No, Julian," my voice was calm and as cold as ice. "You destroyed it yourself. I just turned on the light so they could see it." "Who are you?" He stared into my face, and I could see the terrible realization beginning to dawn in his mind. I smiled. The same smile he hadn't seen in 7 years. His sister's smile. "You told me yourself, brother. Start over. Be happy." So I did. The recognition in his eyes turned to pure animal terror. He staggered as if I had struck him. "Amelia." The name sounded like an echo from another life. Impossible. You're crushed? Destroyed? Buried in some hole? I laughed, a quiet, mirthless laugh. You always underestimated me, Julian. That was your biggest mistake. Eleanor, Thomas, and Charlotte came and stood beside me. Not behind him. Behind me. What's going on? Eleanor asked, looking at our faces. Allow me to introduce, I said, my eyes fixed on my brother's pale face. My brother, Julian Hayward. The man who stole everything from me 7 years ago by forging our father's will. I told them everything. Calmly, methodically, without excess emotion. I told them about the swap documents, the fake sympathy, the humiliating check. Eleanor looked at her husband with disgust. Thomas with contempt. And in the eyes of little Charlotte, his favorite, there was fear. It's a lie, Julian screamed. She's insane. She's getting revenge on me because father left everything to me. Really? I pulled a thin folder from my clutch. Because what I have here are not only the sworn testimony of the notary who certified that forgery, and who, tired of your handouts, decided to clear his conscience before he died. I also have the original will. Father was a smart man. He always made copies. And one of them he left not with a lawyer, but in a bank safe deposit box that only I knew about. I held the folder out to him. He looked at it like it was a rattlesnake. He had lost. And he knew it. I wasn't going to sue him. Why bother? A public scandal would only tarnish the Hayward name, my father's name. I didn't want prison for him. I wanted something worse. I wanted him to live. To live every day with the knowledge that he had lost everything. I'm not taking the company from you, I said quietly, so only he could hear. I'm taking your future. Your wife is leaving you. Your son hates you. Your daughter is afraid of you. You will sit atop your empty empire in your empty house, and the only thing you'll have left is the memory of how you betrayed the one person in the world who loved you. Alive with that. I turned and walked away. Eleanor, Thomas, and Charlotte followed me. We didn't look back. Julian's empire didn't collapse in a day, but it began to rot from the inside. Without the support of his family, with a ruined reputation, he began to make one mistake after another. 2 years later, he was forced to sell a controlling stake to a consortium that, as he would never find out, was secretly controlled by me. I didn't run it myself. I put Thomas in the CEO's chair. He merged technology and music, creating a new, innovative direction and breathed new life into his father's company. His life. Eleanor dedicated herself to charity, no longer as a bored wife, but as an influential and respected figure. She found her purpose. Charlotte got her dog. A golden retriever she named Sunny. And me? I took back my name. Amelia Hayward. I wasn't hiding anymore. The Aurora Gallery flourished. But my main focus became my new family. A family built not on blood and lies, but on choice and love. Sometimes at night, looking at the stars from the terrace of my home, I think of Julian. I feel no hatred, no triumph. Only emptiness. Revenge, it turned out, was not a sweet dish. It was a fire that burned the old world to the ground so that something new could grow in its ashes. I don't know if I found happiness, but I found justice. And perhaps that's even more important. I became the phoenix, risen from the ashes he tried to turn me into. And my flight has only just begun. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left, and thank you for watching.